The deadline for NFL teams to get down to their final 53-man rosters officially 1 p.m. Pacific time tomorrow, Tuesday. While we wait on pins and needles for that, there is some stuff to react to today. Some things around the league that I think are of interest to the Seahawks. 3 names have leaked out so far that we know are being released by the Seahawks. They tend to play things closer to the vest, and we won't know all of their moves until right around the deadline tomorrow. But we did hear from Mike Macdonald today after practice. I have not seen this post-practice press conference. It's about 15 minutes. I'm going to react to it live. Coming up next on Seahawks Forever.
Welcome to the Seahawks Forever podcast. In-depth analysis on everything Seahawks. And now, here's your host, Dan Viens.
When I say live, I mean in real time. This show is not live. It's premiering live. If you're watching that, we can chat about it. But I mean, I'll be reacting to it for the first time along with you. I have had no teasers, haven't seen any clips of this get out there. I was running some errands today and keeping an eye on certain moves around the league. And there's some things I want to talk to you about, but I wanted to react to this. So I think this is kind of the perfect way to approach this on the night before cut down day, as we get ready for the big news and the moving and shaking, some of which we've already seen from other teams around the league. Before we get started, if you would subscribe to the YouTube channel, please, I'd appreciate it. Almost there for 11K. Would love to get over that next milestone before we get to the regular season. Hit that thumbs up to like the video. Really helps push it out to more people on the algorithm. All the other content that I produce, be it on Substack or Patreon, all of those different options are listed and linked down below in the description, as well as all the other ways that you can donate or help support me and the channel, as I am a full-time independent content creator. Let me react to some things from around the league. First of all, there are 3 names from the Seahawks that we know they have decided to move on from. And usually when these are revealed, when they're leaked out during the day, it's done so through their agents, usually, unless the players beat him to it and post something on social media. But usually it's Aaron Wilson, who's based out of Houston. He covers the Texans, but he has so many great connections around the league. If you don't follow him on Twitter, you absolutely should, because he oftentimes seems to be first on this kind of stuff, releases and player moves. He also tends to be first on contract details when new big deals are signed. So definitely worth a follow. Usually he's the first one to get some of this stuff out. But earlier today, the first name that did come out is former UW linebacker Alfonso Tupatala, who I thought really flashed in that Green Bay game. He just, he came along so late in the process. He was added just before the Kansas City game, played a couple special teams reps there. I like his athletic profile. Maybe he's a candidate for the practice squad, although the fact that he was released so much more in advance of the rest of these guys, including those who practiced today, would seem to indicate that the Seahawks are moving on from him. Also, Luke Felix Falalo, the undrafted free agent tackle out of Hawaii. He was also a late add. He was released today, reportedly. And then Seth Coleman, who had he was top 10 among rookies in the league in pressure percentage, had a half a sack in that game against Green Bay, had a sack against Kansas City as well. He was starting to get some buzz among fans, kind of this year's Levi Bell, Nick Reed. But I can tell you, as someone who was at training camp almost every day up until last week, flash is kind of all he did. Just didn't look like a guy worthy of a 53-man roster spot in the NFL, at least not yet. Maybe he gets back to the practice squad, but again, typically, the earlier a player's released, the less likely it is that he'll be invited back on the practice squad. Teams usually release those guys, the guys they want back, at the mass cut down, hoping that they can get them through waivers. If you follow me on Twitter at Seahawks Forever, you'll already know this. But there is one cut already reported today that I think is incredibly intriguing when it comes to the Seahawks. And in particular, when you start to look at 2026 and beyond when it comes to that edge group, right? Don't know what we're going to get from Uchenna Nwosu, when he's going to be healthy. He did pass his physical, hasn't been officially removed from the PUP yet. Don't know if he's going to be ready week 1 or what we're going to see from him when he does come back. Boye Mafe entering the last year of his deal. He's got some questions to answer. Derek Hall, 2 years left on his rookie contract. And then DeMarcus Lawrence entering into the first year of a 3-year deal if he plays it to its conclusion. A guy like Jared Ivey might make the team, although he's more considered a defensive lineman as opposed to an edge guy. And the other young guys that we've seen that have shown us some good stuff this preseason, Tyreek Smith in particular. I think he's the only one from that young edge group that's under consideration to make the 53-man roster. He's had a really, really good camp in preseason, entering into his 3rd year, his 2nd with the Seahawks, or 4th year, actually. Spent his rookie year with Seattle, was released, picked up by Arizona for his 2nd year, and then brought back to Seattle last year. But he's the guy that I've seen him on some 53s. I didn't put him on mine, although he was one of the last. He might have been the 54th or 55th player on my 53-man projection, my final and official one. If you haven't checked that out yet, please do. But Brennan Jackson was released today by the LA Rams, and this came to me as a big surprise. I mean, he had some production last year for them as they played a lot of young guys, obviously, on that Rams defense. Some of you may think, oh, he likes Brennan Jackson because he was a Coug. And yeah, I've liked him for a long time, but it just means that I've been aware of him for a long time. And he's a guy that he was a draft crush of mine. I mocked him in probably 60 to 70% of my mock drafts for the Seahawks leading up to the 2024 draft. Really thought he fit a need. Love the motor. Love how physical he is. Love his pass rushing juice that he has. But he also exemplifies everything the Seahawks look for in players and in people. I mean, he's a leader. He's a family man, had a family even while he was in college, decided to come back for his senior year and exhaust all of his eligibility because he thought the Cougs had a chance to win. He's a program guy. He's 100% committed. The motor, the work ethic, the leadership, everything you want. And he's long and he's fast. His athletic profile, his relative athletic score is over 9. I think it's like 9.3. I'm shocked that the Rams released him, to be honest. Last year, he had 11 and a half tackles for loss. No. Hang on. I'm looking at old stats here. He was taken in the 5th round in 2024. And I'm sorry, I had it somewhere. His production from last year. It wasn't nothing. And this preseason, he's had 2 sacks for the Rams. He was among the league leaders in sacks in this preseason. And just let me do this real quick because I hate to leave you hanging when I promise something. And yeah, I could have had this ready before we started. Last year, his rookie year as a part-time rotational player, only appeared in 7 games, 1 start. He had 3 tackles and an assist and a pass defense. So didn't really get off the field or off the bench much last year for the Rams. But he looked the part when he had opportunities this preseason. And he's a guy that, look, I haven't grinded his preseason Rams tape, but from the player that I was so familiar with watching his entire career unfold in Pullman, and also in all the work I did on him leading up to the draft and looking at that edge group, he just seems like a guy that I prefer his ceiling over a Tyreek Smith, or take your pick from the rest of the guys in that group, right? The Connor O'Tooles, the Jamie Sheriffs. I think he's got a chance to be a significant rotational player for this team moving forward. Now, the problem is he's going to have some appeal because of that athletic profile, because of his makeup, because of his preseason production. The fact that he was released early like this makes it tough. The Seahawks are, it's the same as the draft order, right? It's in reverse order of standings. So the Seahawks sitting at 18th in waiver order. 17 teams would have to decide they're not going to claim Brennan Jackson in order for him to get to the Seahawks. So just kind of a personal preference thing of mine, something to keep an eye on. He's the first player among all of the players that have been reportedly cut so far that I'm into. I haven't really seen anyone else released by another team that is compelling enough to me that I think he would be an upgrade over anything else the Seahawks might be releasing in the next 18 hours or so. All right, let's get into this. Let's cue this up. This is Mike Macdonald from the VMAC today after practice. I assume some of it will be looking back and some questions, some follow-up questions about injuries and things that happened in that Green Bay game, and also about roster decisions. So I'll be pausing it along the way if there's something I need to react to, and we're going to watch this together. Here we go.
All right. Great to see everybody. I know you have a lot of questions about our roster and all the things kind of going on right now, but hope you understand. We're just going to keep it tight for right now. And
there you go. He's not going to answer any of those questions.
We're still working through the process of these transactions, but and John said this, and I love how we do it here. It's, we're looking at it through the lens of, hey, this is the 70. This is not the final 53. We need everybody in our building. All these guys have been awesome, and
that's a great point. Just to pause it here real quick. It's not just a 53-man roster anymore. It's 53 plus 16. So yeah, it's 60. It's 69. Because of the evolution of the rules over the last couple of years in how much more you can elevate guys on game day and essentially borrow from your practice squad for your game day roster up to a point until you use a guy a certain number of times, and then you have to put him on your 53. But it's a good way to look at it. And less than 2% of players are claimed on the cut down to 53. So most of the time, although it does play into some of these decisions they're going to make, what are the chances? We want to keep that guy. What are the chances he gets claimed? And we've talked about this before. Having Pete Carroll looming out there might just be a little bit of an added variable that they have to account for in releasing, if they're thinking about releasing certain guys, like looking at Pete's roster, what's going on there with the Raiders. You wonder about some of the young receivers maybe that he's familiar with. They have some needs there. They just signed Amari Cooper today. Jacoby Myers requesting a trade. Their receiver room's kind of a mess down there. So I do think that'll play into some of these decisions, but this is Mike just telling you, hey, we're not going to give you a lot to go on today.
This is the crew that we're building for the long haul. And so it's a big day for these guys. I understand that, big couple days, but, hopefully we have a kind of a little bit longer term view of their careers. And, we really appreciate the guys that have been here the whole time. They've done a great job.
Kind of the goal this week is you transition from that preseason mode to then a game in a couple weeks.
Yeah, it's to me, it's just, hey, how we go about our business on the field in terms of what we're trying to get done, that varies. Like today, it was a shorter, quicker, faster practice. We're doing some extra conditioning, but anytime we take the field, it's always the same intent of what we're trying to create. So we're trying to play our brand of ball every time we get out there and keep that going all the way into next week. But you're going to have a long weekend, so staying sharp is really important. Stacking great reps, keeping our wind, keeping our conditioning is going to be really important as well.
You were talking about all the competitions you were looking forward to coming into camp. Now you're looking back at it. Are there any ones that stick out as you're really pleased with how those competitions went?
Well, it's funny.
This will be an interesting answer. That's a really crafty question in the way he worded it from Brian. That's good stuff. He said he wasn't going to talk about roster decisions. It's a really smart way to frame that question.
It's easy to underestimate how well competition works in terms of getting the best out of people. So I think the coolest thing out of the whole thing was we saw a lot of improvement at a lot of position groups, and guys develop and players got better, and I think our team improved because of it. So I think that's a cool aspect of how training camp works and how we do business.
Just a little reminder that players get better, that they're allowed to get better. One of my biggest pet peeves on social media we all have access now to coaching tape and all 22 and everything else. And a bunch of us are draft nerds and we like to watch highlights and we like to watch tapes, whatever. The number of times that I've had to try and push back against people because they make these massive judgments, either negatively or positively, about a player based on a small sample size of what they've seen so far, completely ignoring the fact that making it in the NFL is a huge jump and that players get better and that they're never going to be the same player in year 3 or 4 than they are today. We've heard a lot of Jalen Milroe slander because he didn't light the world on fire against the Packers. I thought he was fine. I thought for where he is in his development, it was absolutely fine. But there's people that want to cut him because he didn't blow them away on Saturday, completely ignoring the fact that it's a development process and these players are going to look different in year 2 and 3 and 4. And some of these roster decisions aren't just made on who are my best 53 players right now, but also what's that player going to be 3 months from now? Is he going to help us down the stretch? What's he going to be next year? How does he fit into this plan moving forward?
When you look at just the preseason as a whole, like the 3 games, I mean, do you have any real takeaways of things you kind of saw out of that you liked or something you...
Well, yeah, our guys show up to play, and we have great intent and all the things, and that's what we're shooting for. Again, whether it's today a lighter practice, tomorrow's gonna be a lighter practice, but it doesn't mean the mental intensity is not there and what we're trying to achieve. So the guys are ready to play. I think they're getting used to our game process, which is really great. Things that we wanted to improve on from game to game, I felt like we did, and that's important.
When you have a young player competing with an older player at a position, do you have a philosophy on when you go with the youth versus when you want to stick with experience?
It's a good question. I think they're all independent observations. Sometimes you're going to go with how the team's going to help you right now. Sometimes you're looking at the long haul. That's where like having a great partnership with personnel and have an idea of like, hey, we're working it's now and a long term. If you are become a little myopic in how you see the team, I think that's where guys like John, the rest of our guys up there can give you some perspective on stuff. But I think it varies, to answer your question.
I do appreciate Coach Macdonald, and I got a little closer look at this during training camp, being able to stand 3 feet away from him and ask some of these questions myself. He's so thoughtful in how he answers questions, and as a reporter, that's such a comforting feeling because it gives you the freedom to ask whatever is on your mind, knowing that he's not going to snap at you. I mean, there's been times, right? We've seen it. But he's for the most part, he's not going to. It would have been really easy for him in that circumstance to answer that question like this. It's all a case-by-case basis. Period. Boom. Done. End of question. There's a lot of coaches in the league that would have answered it that same way. But he gave it a longer, more thoughtful answer, which gives all those covering the team a little more content, and everyone wins.
In your second year, how much clearer is that now, given that you can see the overall picture with the front office and the coaches in your second year? How much is that?
It is, and it helps messaging with. It's a lot clearer, and it helps with the messaging with the guys of what we're trying to create, and having gone through how we build our team throughout the entire year, having lived that now, it gives you a great perspective on where we are right now in this process. There's a lot to do about the 53, and it's kind of this sacred number, but I mean, what is it going to last? Maybe a week, and you're bringing guys up from the practice squad. There's transactions all over the place, so we're trying to build it for the long haul.
When you looked at the film, what did you think of Jalen Milroe? Just kind of how did you assess it when you looked at it?
I thought there was a lot of good stuff. I mean, he made some really good throws on time. Went through his progressions. There's some we go back to the ball. I mean, I think that's pretty obvious leaving the field, but I thought the guy made some really cool plays throughout the game, stuff that we can build on moving forward. So yeah, of course, there's things that we want to get better at and put up more points and all that type of stuff, but definitely a good foundation to move forward.
Seems like he was pretty much in the pocket for most of the first half, and then he kind of got outside in the second half. Was that by design or just how plays went?
I think it's more how plays went. There's a couple, I believe the quarterback design run, the one that he got out around the end, I think that was just something we had in the game plan that happened to get called in the second half, but it wasn't a point of emphasis to call any different types of plays. I mean, we're second half there, you got to score quickly when you're down multiple scores, so that also limits your play sheet as well.
Did Shannon think he was a little more regular practicing today?
That's a good question, and it's one that I had on my mind. I would have worded it slightly different. I would have asked, is that an intentional part of his development that you want him for now to try as much as he can to operate from the pocket and not be so quick to get outside of it? But I think it probably would have elicited kind of the same question. I'm interested in this one now. He's being asked about Chenna's progress.
Yeah, he's on the progression. You know, you think about Chenna, he's always, to me, he's like, we're going to be the ones that have to make sure that we're being responsible here and handling it, because he's always going to be mentally ready to do more. And that's just the type of guy he is.
You've been putting a lot of work into building the culture. And
I have absolutely no feel for whether or not we're going to see Nwosu against the 49ers week 1. Like, you know, he's been saying to us for weeks now, they've had to hold him back. He's pushing his rehab so hard. He was out there doing some work in pads before the joint practice, running through warmups and some of the individual work. If we get indication next week when they start game prep that he's going full, there might be a chance. In the past, like Pete always wanted to see, maybe not always, there were a couple of exceptions, but by and large, he always wanted to see a player coming back from injury practice in full for 2 weeks before they played him in a game. Maybe we'll get some indication as the week goes along. They do practice through Thursday, and then they give the players Friday, Saturday, Sunday off, and then they come back and they get ready for their game prep, get into their normal routine for the 49ers. But something definitely to keep an eye on these next few days. If he gets out there and he's going anything close to full this week, even if it's just 1 or 2 of these practices before they shut him down on the weekend, that could be a strong indicator that he might be available against the 49ers.
The team here, and there's connection in the locker room. How much do you think about, you know, when you're talking about adding new players, personality, like disrupting that versus talents? How much does that?
Yeah, it's a great question, but it's a great.
And I gotta give props to Brian, man. He asks really carefully crafted questions. And he's good about not asking closed-ended questions. I even make that mistake sometimes. You can assume that an interviewee is going to take your question and run with it. But sometimes if you give them an opportunity to answer yes or no, they just will. That's twice now in this press conference that he's gotten that's a good question out of Mike Macdonald, which is, you know, as a journalist, that's the holy grail, kind of, when you can get someone that you consider to be really smart to say that's a good question, because it means it's not one that they get all the time. But let's hear what his answer is here. This is really
great question, and it matters. And it's definitely at the forefront of the conversations. It's this is our team, and so the people that we bring in, whether it's off the field or players or staff or what, I mean, that really matters. There's a sliding scale to a certain extent, but you know, we want Seahawks, you know, as our coaches, staff, players, obviously, but that's really important.
It's something that's been weighing on my mind for the last week or two, and especially this week as I prepared for my final 53-man projection. Like, how much in years past we've seen Pete and John like churn the last couple of days leading up to cut down, like, and even afterwards, like cutting guys, claiming other guys. This team's identity and their personality is so strong and so tight knit. It's one of the most positive I've ever felt. And, you know, some of that I got to be exposed to it this year more than ever, but just everyone pulling for each other, no bad eggs, no contract issues, no disgruntled players, everyone all in. How much you have to give that some weight before you bring someone in like a Jadeveon Clowney. I think there's a fit for him on this roster, and he's worked with Macdonald before, and he obviously knows the people in the building. But where's he at? He's a guy that, you know, this team as it is constructed today has been together for 6 months now, working their tail off every single day, building that camaraderie and building that team aspect. You bring a 32-year-old veteran that didn't feel like he wanted to participate in training camp, and you want to bring him in at the last minute and give him a role in this team. That's a huge consideration. I'm not sure that that's where they are in their development. I wrote that in my 53-man projection. I talked about it on the show yesterday. It's one of the reasons I kind of went conservative on projecting those moves. Obviously, Trey Hendrickson's off the market now. Micah Parsons isn't going anywhere. All those big names. We don't know what's going on with Christian Wilkins. Haven't heard anything new with him. He's got some other stuff he's got to deal with, I think, before he goes back out on the market. But I don't know how willing they're going to be. It's one thing you want to go out of Brennan Jackson in the place of a Tyreek Smith or something like that. Okay, but bringing in a guy like Clowney, you have to really ask yourself at this juncture, like, how is he going to be accepted, considering he hasn't gone through any of the other team building stuff that's brought this group to where they are today.
No, I don't. It's just let's see how it goes. We're still 2 weeks away. Players obviously.
I'm trying to hear that question again.
That's really important.
Okay, he was just asked a follow-up question to what he had said about Chenna earlier. Do you have a feel for whether he'll be ready week 1?
No, I don't. It's just let's see how it goes. We're still 2 weeks away. He looks great. He's in great spirits. We're on the progression, but we got to kind of play it day by day at this point.
How about Tyrese?
Tyrese, let's see him practice a full practice first before we start kind of making projections towards the game. But he's projected to practice next week at full, and we'll see how that goes.
On that note.
Okay, so now obviously Nwosu's been out much longer with a much more significant injury than Tyrese Knight. He's been out for about the last 3 weeks, but the fact that he just told us he's projected to practice in full next week, and if he's good to go, he should be good to go for the game. Does that mean he would apply that same standard to Nwosu? I suspect his protocol is going to be different because he's recovering from a couple different things and he's been out longer.
Was it like to see him do a little bit more for you and kind of start easing back into the mix?
It's great. You need reps, especially at linebacker. So he's going to do everything he possibly can to get the most out of those mental reps before he can go full speed. And we're going to have a plan for it. It's not ideal, but we're fortunate that it's not more serious and he's available to us. So in a way, we're blessed that we're going to possibly have him next week, and then and it's something that we're not going to be losing him long term, which would have been scary.
And also, I'll just say this for the record. I know we've talked about this, but I'm a lot less concerned about their inside linebacker depth than many of you are. And some of that is because I just got to see more of it this year, day in, day out. But if Tyrese Knight isn't ready to go, then his position against the 49ers, it'll be a combination of Patrick O'Connell will be the starting weak side linebacker in base packages. And then it'll be some Nick Emenwari, and assuming he makes the final roster, it'll be some D'Anthony Bell playing weak side linebacker as well. Maybe Drake Thomas, although I think they prefer him at Mike. O'Connell's first up at weak side linebacker. I thought he had a great preseason. I thought we've seen the best version of him up till this point, and I think the Seahawks will be completely fine with Patrick O'Connell lining up next to Ernest Jones in the event that Knight can't go.
From Pat when he comes back, or would you?
Yeah, I'd say like everything's on the table. Everything from he might not be ready to he could possibly play the whole game, or maybe we're subbing it out a little bit.
Patrick and Drake both filling linebacker guys out. What have you seen out of those two? They've got those opportunities to step in.
I thought both guys played a really good game last game. Again, talking about two guys that have been available the whole time. Great intentionality, great spirit, played really hard. I thought they played some of their best football last game, which was great.
I did find their defensive rotations interesting against the Packers because I think at least until later in the game, they didn't just play the back end of the roster, giving those guys a chance to make the team. They essentially played their second string defense for most of the game. And in particular, O'Connell and Thomas were out there together a lot. And I think they use this as an opportunity not just to evaluate the roster and make these cut decisions, but also to get some guys ready.
Still working through the pec. It's
Haynes.
We'll give a timetable here. We're still working through like how long it's going to be.
It's amazing how quickly this is flipped, and it seems like the prevailing thought out there now that all these other 53-man roster projections are coming out, is that they'll take the opportunity to put him on IR with the designation to return. Remember, they changed the rule, and you can now. It used to be, and I had this wrong the other day. I was corrected. It used to be that you had to pick your 53, and then once you establish that, you could put a couple of those guys on IR with a designation to return, and then you'd have to sign a couple other players, either from your practice squad or off the street, to fill those other spots. Now you can designate 2 players at the cut down for IR with a designation to return. And so it doesn't sound like Jake Bobo's concussion is serious enough that he won't make it through the protocol. Doesn't sound like Mike Morris's thing is going to keep him out very long. If Tyrese Knight has a setback, if Uchenna Nwosu has a setback, they can maybe take advantage of that. Although I think Nwosu, since he was already on PUP, I don't know if you can do that. But in the event that because they clearly, it was some combination of the pec injury and performance that lost Haynes the right guard spot. Because even before the pec injury cropped up, he was losing ground to Anthony Bradford. And it was trending in the direction that he wasn't going to be a starter. And then they tried him at center, and then they stopped that experiment again. Some of that might have had to do with the pec. But if that's a guy that they still feel like there's a future, they still feel like they want to hang on to him, they might be shopping him. They could be. I don't think cutting him is a consideration, being the 81st pick just a year ago, but they would have that option available to them where they could put him on injured reserve with an opportunity or designation to return. He'd have to miss 4 games, or is it 6? 4 is PUP. Is it 6? Oh my gosh. I just looked this up earlier today. But the point being that they can preserve him, maybe even kind of look at it as a redshirt year while he develops and gets stronger for another year, and they try it again. But that second string, those second string guard decisions are going to be fascinating.
Torrey's kind of on the Tyrese timetable. Hasn't practiced full, ramping up into next week. Projected to play or practice full some point next week, so we'll play it by ear going into the game.
Horton's another guy that when it first happened and the injury happened against the Chiefs, it sounded pretty minor. It sounded like he could have gone back into the game, but Macdonald said, I shut him down. We didn't want to risk it. And now we're getting kind of this uncertainty again with some of the receiver decisions they have to make. What to do about MVS? Can you get Cody White through waivers to the practice squad again in his 7th year? Or with that situation that I spoke of earlier in Las Vegas, right? Would Pete maybe swoop in and claim him? That would make a lot of sense to me. I could see them saying, okay, look, he's a rookie. He's coming off a serious injury from a year ago in college. Now he's got the ankle. If they think he's not going to be ready for week 1 and not be 100%, maybe you put Horton on IR with a designation to return, which allows you to keep White and Young on the roster, and then you bring Horton back when he's ready to go. It's an option.
Peely's, I'm not making this up, I swear. It's really the same amount of time.
Now, Peely's guy, this is something I'm glad he brought up because I had seen this earlier today. I thought he didn't play against Green Bay because he had a spot on the roster. And I put on my final 53, I put Peely and Bohanna together. Jonathan Hank is not going to be ready to go against Niners. He's going to begin the season on the PUP list. We may never see Jonathan Hankins play for the Seahawks again. Like he's at an advanced age, carrying 335 pounds. He's got a back issue now. That might be it for him. But Peely's banged up a little bit now. Now, to waive him, you'd have to have an injury settlement, but those are usually pretty minor little tweaks. I wonder if this now presents an opportunity for them to waive Peely keep a guy like J.R. Singleton, who just got better every day and had a really, really nice camp. Now, he's a different player than Peely. He's more of a 3-tech, but man, I like what I see from him. He would be maybe my number one priority to get to the practice squad of all the cuts, but maybe it allows you to keep a guy like him, or if they have some thought of bringing in someone like a Clowney, or a Brennan Jackson, for example, right? That it could just give you that little bit of extra flexibility, and you just keep Bohanna, you waive Peely, nobody picks him up because he's banged up and he's been out there before and not been claimed. They have more flexibility and some creative options, I think, available to them today than they did a day ago, at least as far as the information we had when I made my 53.
No. I mean, he hasn't done like intense football workouts yet. That's probably the best I can give you in terms of it.
Who was that?
Making this up, I swear. It's really the same amount of time.
Jonathan Hankins, anything new with him?
No. I mean, he hasn't done like intense football workouts yet. That's probably the best I can give you in terms of a timetable.
So I guess I kind of got ahead of Coach Macdonald there. That doesn't sound promising at all. I think there's a better chance that we don't ever see Jonathan Hankins again than we get him back as a viable part of this roster at some point this year.
It's not like season ending or anything right now. So
I mean, that's what he says. But when you have a guy that's, how old is Jonathan Hankins now? Is he 35, 36? He's 33. But again, a lot of wear and tear, and now it's a back issue. Like, he can say it's not season ending, but if Brandon Peely and Quentin Bohanna or J.R. Singleton or whoever, Jay Reed, if they're getting the production they like out of this roster, why would you need to add Jonathan Hankins later on? Now, he can always be a guy that they waive. No one's going to pick him up at his age, or he could just say, no, he's a vested veteran, so he doesn't have to go through waivers. He would just be cut. He could just turn down other offers, and he could re-sign on the practice squad. He could do like a Jason Peters thing if this is the only place he wants to play the rest of his career and be kind of insurance. I am no longer counting on Jonathan Hankins to be a part of this team.
Riley Mills, we obviously, he's been working his way back from the knee and everything, but like, what are you kind of seeing of his timeline and how he's progressing and what you've seen from him up until this point? Obviously not on the field, but like, and when could
it's tough to put a timetable on it until they start doing like football stuff. But I mean, he's doing straight line things. He's doing like slower individual right now. So you kind of, the next thing is start changing direction stuff, some more intense individual. We're talking multiple weeks, and then he's got to practice and go through that whole process. So he's doing a heck of a job. And we're hoping that we get him some point during the season.
I would not be mad if we don't see Riley Mills at all this year, because I think his future is really bright. And I think the Seahawks love him, and they see a bright future for him. And if you're only going to get him back for the last 4 or 5 games of the year, he's never played in the league. He's never played in this scheme. Maybe you get a couple of snaps out of him, unless you've got some significant injury issues and you have a need and you got to throw a guy right out there. But if he stays on injury reserve all year, for example, and never gets activated, his contract tolls to next year. This is what happened with Darrell Taylor. And he essentially then gets 4 more years on his contract. And so they control him longer. It sounds like they're bound and determined not to rush him back. And I think that's a good thing, because you look ahead to 2026 and wow, that could be like starting the season with a 2nd or 3rd round pick, because if he hadn't torn that ACL in the college football playoffs, that's where Riley Mills would have gone.
Decisions you got to make every time you're setting the game day roster, but have you guys been operating with the thought that, like, generally speaking, you're going to have 3 quarterbacks up on game day?
We've worked out both scenarios.
Good question.
We do mock during preseason. We do like mock who would be up, how would we handle it, just so we're with the new offensive staff, making sure we understand, hey, what it's going to look like once we probably get into the season. And then you toss around certain scenarios. So we've worked through both scenarios.
Do you have any update on
That's really cool to hear, like that they even practice that stuff. That before a preseason game, he and John Schneider get together and go, okay, who would we, if this was a live game, who would we have on the 53? Who would we elevate? And the question there is relevant because I think there's still some confusion out there among the fan base as to how the emergency quarterback rule works. To qualify as the third emergency quarterback, you have to be on the 53-man roster. You can't call a guy up from the practice squad for that. And then you designate him as your emergency quarterback. That allows you to activate another practice squad player. It kind of buys you a roster spot. But he can only enter the game if the first two quarterbacks get injured and have to come out of the game. So you can't have Jalen Milroe be the emergency quarterback and then come in and run a tush push or come in and run a wildcat package. You can't do it that way. Both Sam Darnold and Drew Lock would have to get hurt in order for Milroe to be able to come into the game. And so I was thinking about this today as I was running around driving in the car, that I think it might vary week to week based on opponent, game plan, scheme, defensive looks. There might be games where Jalen Milroe is inactive. Maybe they need another player. They feel like they need that extra corner because they're facing a team that spreads the ball around more. I don't think it's cut and dried that every single game, when it's 3rd and 1, we're going to see Jalen Milroe, or 3rd and 3, they're going to come in and run RPOs with him. And I think early in the season, we might not see it as much as we expected, and we might not see it as much as we hoped because we're all intrigued by the possibility of it, right?
Yeah, he's doing great. He's in the protocol right now, and
Jake,
we'll see how it goes. But
Bobo.
It's been considering everything the way it looked, and
yeah, he should be good to go. It sounds like
watching the play in person, we're really fortunate.
In a preseason game where some starters are not playing and maybe on the side with you, do you get anything out of that, or do they learn anything? Do you learn anything about them? Like, let's say like Devin Witherspoon, who's normally running.
Yeah, it's interesting. I haven't really asked them that question verbatim. I'm sure it does. I'm sure they're eager to get out there and go play. But I'll tell you what, our vets have been awesome this preseason. The guys haven't been playing. Spoon is given, but you can go down the list when you watch the guys on the sideline, especially guys like the guys that are in position group and on their side of the ball, and they're making plays. It's just they're more excited than the guy making the play, which is just shows you what types of guys they are, So it's been a lot of fun. Almost got another cost of doing business this past game, but would have been worth it.
If I could dig into that line of questioning a little bit more, I would ask him something along the lines of, how much does it concern you in the preseason that with how teams approach these games differently? And the Green Bay game was a great example that, the Seahawks started this game with essentially their second string defense against most of Green Bay's starting offense. Does that, how do you account for that? How do you plan for that? Do you feel like that's a problem that needs to be addressed in the preseason? I would want to kind of dig into that line of questioning a little bit because it is a concern. How fair of an evaluation process was it for Jalen Milroe on Saturday, given that, Kenny Clark wasn't out there. There were a couple of starters for Green Bay that weren't out there, but most of their starting defense was. And you ran out there with Jalen Milroe and a third string offensive line. Are you concerned about injury? Are you concerned about how quality the reps really are? Maybe that's more of a line of questioning that would be something you dig into with him on like a one-on-one basis. But that's where my brain goes to and my curiosity lies.
Mike Morris, any update on him?
No, yeah. Did we say where he's at right now, Mike? Okay. Yeah, he's in the concussion protocol, so we'll see how it goes in the next week.
Okay. That was different. There was a moment last year that was very similar to that, and I can't put my finger on it. And maybe it was even a Pete moment a couple of years ago. There was where they were asking about an injured player, And now I can't, for the life of me, remember if it was Macdonald or Carroll. If you guys can, let me know in the comments. And he like turned and he was like, hey, have we said that yet? No? Okay. And then the next day they put the guy on injured reserve. That was different, because what have we seen? I was just about to say, well, this whole press conference is just about him checking on injured players, which they've had a really healthy preseason all the way up until this point. Now it's like 10 guys that everybody's asking about. The fact that he turned to Dave Pearson, I assume that's who he was turning to. That's usually who's standing over to his left, and asked, have we announced what we're doing there? I think Mike Morris might be going on injured reserve, which again would open up another spot on that defensive line. I think Jared Ivey's the first guy up because he can play inside and out. And so he would slide right into that role. But it would open up an opportunity to claim a Brennan Jackson or to have a J.R. Singleton make the final roster. That was intriguing, and I don't think it was nothing.
The guys you are going to waive, you make a point of speaking to each one of them individually.
Yeah.
What's your message? What do you do?
Yeah, it's not like a doom and gloom. That's kind of the whole point of the whole thing is this isn't like this isn't, of course, where you want to be right now in your career, but this isn't the end. This is another transaction we unfortunately have to make at this point in the season, and give them some feedback on what's going on. I mean, conversations vary based on the person, but all our coaches and our personnel, they do a great job of keeping it real with the guy, telling him the truth, telling him with love, and hopefully we'll see him again real soon.
You have to wonder what it's like today. So it's 69 players. They've already released 3. They have Morangis, so that puts them at 91. So they're down to 88. So they really only are parting with 19 players that aren't going to be asked back tomorrow, right? So there's 19 players that practiced today that aren't going to be here tomorrow. Practice tomorrow is scheduled for later in the day, 3:45, I think, which is a much later time than they usually practice, because the cut down is at 1 o'clock. So obviously gives them time to talk to those guys, let them know they're not going to be out of practice that day. But there's guys that practiced today that they've already decided aren't going to be on the roster tomorrow. It's just an interesting dynamic.
When you sit in on those, or how did you?
Well, I mean, I've been around since when we've made transactions through a whole career, and you try to put yourself in their shoes about what that day's like for them, and frankly, our John is really the model for it, and I just think it's the right way to do it. I'm really excited about how we do it here.
Our John, I like that reference.
The way the practice squad rules have changed over the last several years, the fact that those guys can come up and even easier than it was in the past to play on game day, does that make it a little bit different having those conversations about staying ready? And
absolutely, yeah. And the guys that were here last year, you got, I think we have several examples of guys come up and playing great football for us. Cody White, Josh Jobe. You can go down the list of guys being ready, and you, as an organization and as the head coach, you take a tremendous amount of pride in how you develop your guys. And when you have the feeling when guys have an opportunity to come up and play in a game and you're excited to see them play, well, that's the way you want it to feel. You don't want to be like, oh shoot, so-and-so's got to come play this game. No, you're like, oh, okay, this guy's been working his tail off, making plays in practice and on the look team and in special teams practice and all that. Let's go watch him play on Sunday and let's have him go help us win a football game. So that's the attitude we want to have.
All right, last question. Does Drew Lock go straight into scout team mode, and what, if any, value might Jalen Milroe have as a scout team quarterback instead of some weeks instead?
What do you mean he goes right into scout team mode?
Right now, I mean, are you in regular season mode in that?
Right now, no, right now we're not. Okay. We'll really start that exclusively next week. We'll introduce we've already introduced how we do like scout team looks, things like that. We'll kind of ramp it up throughout the rest of the week, but I think right now it's important for us to stay sharp, play our stuff this week, and then next week we can get into more San Francisco stuff.
Yeah, see, that's a great. I love Greg for asking that question because it got the answer that I think some of us take for granted, or maybe we don't realize. It's another thing I was thinking about recently. Like, how early do you start planning for week one, it's not often that you open the season in your division and against a huge division rival, do you start sneaking in some game plan stuff? Well, no, because you're about to let 20 of these guys go out on the open market, right? And imagine if you're the 49ers, how desperate they are at the receiver position. If the Seahawks release a Cody White, it doesn't even have to be a Cody White. It could be a Steven Sims, right? It could be a Tyrone Broden. It could be a Ricky White III. He's not going to make the 53, so he's going to have to get through waivers. If you're the 40, I'm not a betting man, but if I would bet that the chances are much better that the 49ers would claim one of our receivers than not. So you can't put any game plan in yet. You can't start that process while these guys are still in the building. You just can't.
And there's no row, depending on the opponent, I presume, but he could probably be a scout team quarterback.
Yeah, of course. I mean, well, first of all, he needs reps, as does Drew. And, we're going to have plays for Jalen and game plans, and he's going to rep those are the ones. And, however we build the package for him going into games, he needs those reps and walkthrough and full speed. So that's going to be important.
Wow. So sometimes you get nothing out of these press conferences. That was a big nugget. Like, that is the most definitively he has told us. He's talked about it, but never in these certain terms. He's going to have reps with the ones. We're going to put packages in for him with the ones. There you have it. It's going to happen. But also, it's great. It's another great question from Greg. It's a great point from Mike. When they're facing Kyler Murray, they faced Jaden Daniels this year. When you're facing guys like that are that mobile, you're going to have Jalen Milroe as your scout team quarterback to give your defense the best look at what they might be facing on Sunday.
How we do it, who gets how many reps, all that. I mean, obviously, Sam, it starts with how many reps he needs to get ready, and then we kind of work off from there.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Wow, there was some good stuff there. There was more than I expected there to be coming out of that. Now, how does Dalton Reisner fit into what's going to happen with this roster, right? Every single offensive lineman left on this roster, save for Josh Jones, is on his rookie deal. It has to be the youngest offensive line group in the league. I love the idea of adding Reisner. He can play left guard and right guard. He's a better pass protector than he is a run blocker, but he's league average. He's adequate as a run blocker. He was reported to be on his way to Seattle at some point to interview or visit. That hasn't happened yet. I think there's two things going on here. Number one, he's going to wait and see what happens at cutdown day for himself, see if there's teams out there that might call him right after they set their rosters that have a clear path to a starting job. Obviously, can't blame the guy for that, right? He met with Cincinnati already. They drafted Dylan Fairchild out of Georgia at one guard. I can't remember who is at their other guard, but he's a veteran player. He's a solid player. I don't know that he has a better path to starting there than he would in Seattle. If I'm him and I'm looking at this roster, I'm thinking, okay, Anthony Bradford has had a really good preseason. There's some good tape out there, but he's been injured the last 2 years. He's missed games the last 2 seasons. He has to prove he's durable. And after that, though, behind ZELLE and Bradford, what are the chances in the NFL in 2025 that both your starting guards are going to make it unscathed through the entire season? There's nothing else there. Satao LeMay is not going to make this roster. He took a huge step back. Don't know what happened there. Christian Haynes, as I said earlier, might end up on injured reserve. But if not, they're down on him. Bryce Cabledew and Mason Richmond are your next guys up, and they're rookies. I think it's going to be some combination of those two because they like the upside. But if anything should happen, somebody suggested in the live chat the other day, I wish I could give him credit for this. I wish I had thought of it first. But if, for example, Anthony Bradford gets hurt at right guard, I think the move would be to move Sundell to right guard and then reinstall Olu Oluwatimi as your starting center. So there's some flexibility there. But the first move could be Josh Jones as well. He played really well in place of Charles Cross as left tackle in this preseason, but he has pretty extensive guard experience for him too. And he might actually be the first option there. But for Reisner, he might want to wait a day or two just to see how things shake out. He might get a phone call that he hasn't gotten up until this point. But also from a Seahawks standpoint, there's no need to push it in the next 24 hours because you wait till all the dust settles, and then guess what? You can do the Jason Peters thing, and you can sign him to the practice squad while he gets in shape, learns the playbook, learns the scheme, shows you what he can do, and then you can either release him and let him go back out there if you don't think he's going to work, or put him on your 53-man roster, right? So I do think that's the one that bears monitoring. And then the Clowney one, until he signs somewhere else, if he does, as long as he's available, I think he kind of looms out there as a possibility. I just don't know from a chemistry standpoint now, kind of based on what we talked about earlier with Macdonald, if that makes sense now, especially because, you know, he made it pretty clear. His approach to this training camp and this process was pretty clear. I don't want to practice. I don't want to deal with training camp. But now, as of 3 days ago, it was reported. Now I want to start taking visits. Like, it happens. It's pretty common in this league. And Ndamukong Suh, I think, did it for the last 5 or 6 years of his career. I just don't know if that's a fit right now, especially with the opportunity to get Nwosu back pretty quickly. Thanks for tuning in. That was fun. Those are always fun to react to. So tomorrow, here's the plan. I will be on standby, essentially. I'm going to try to get up early and get to the gym, get that over with. And then 1 o'clock Pacific time is the deadline. The Seahawks are notoriously tight about releasing their cuts. I got to be on the road by 4 o'clock tomorrow. So if it's not officially released by then, we usually have a pretty clear idea what the roster is going to look like because agents and players will make it known that they've been released. So we'll just kind of see how it goes. I'll be on standby. Look for me to go live sometime right around 1 o'clock. We'll just take all the information we have at that point. We'll discuss it. We'll kind of connect some dots and put some things together. And then if anything significant should happen later tomorrow night, I can react to it later in the evening. Thursday, really excited about this. Brady Henderson's going to be joining me here on the show, get his thoughts on what he's seen in this training camp. I believe he said it's his 9th covering them for ESPN, but before that in his radio days, he has seen many of these training camps. Can't wait to get him on. And then some other cool stuff moving forward into this weekend before I hit the road and head back to the East Coast, including I'm going to have a fantasy football expert. Really excited to talk to this gentleman and just take a look. I've always wanted to do this in the past and haven't really dug into it enough, but take a look at how he thinks some of the Seahawks skill position players might stack up if you're a fantasy football player and you want to add a Seahawk or two to your team. Until tomorrow, check out the Substack. I'll keep a live running thread there. I've already begun it with cuts so far. That is free until week 2 of the regular season. Please check that out. All the other ways you can support me as a full-time independent content creator listed and linked down below in the description. Until tomorrow, I'm Dan. This is Seahawks Forever. Forever and always, go Hawks. Thanks for watching.